What made today's budget speech the most crucial since the dawn of democracy? And how have the current global economic challenges impacted budget allocations? To what extent does lack of investor confidence affect economic growth? And how can the state ensure that government officials and municipalities adhere to cost-cutting measures? What time is it? It is question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. In his much anticipated budget speech today, Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan reiterated that while tough economic times lie ahead, this challenge is not insurmountable. He said, and I quote, "If we act together on these principles as public representatives, civil servants, business people, youth, workers and citizens, we can overcome the challenges of tough economic times and difficult adjustments," close quote. But is the budget likely to benefit the poor and the unemployed? A reminder that we are live. Therefore, you can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial 0891104210. Our Twitter handle at QuestionTime24. My guest today, Money Matters Main. Owen Nkomo is the executive partner at Inkunzi Wealth Group. And from our Durban studios, we have, of course, Israel Mkhize, who is a political economist. He's down in KZN. Gentlemen, welcome to Question Time. Kabazel, welcome.
Thank you for having us, Mpho, the viewers.
And Mr. Nkomo, let me start with you. A lot of people were expecting a lot of miracles, and the budget was hailed as a good one, including, surprise, by the EFF.
Yeah, it was quite interesting, the manner in which the minister delivered or structured that budget. Because, truth be told, we were in a very difficult time. In the markets and indeed people in the street were really expecting a more intense budget from a perspective of austerity, where we're saying we needed to see more aggressive cuts, where we needed to see more maybe delays in some of the projects being implemented by the government, in order to at least help stomach the current economic challenges that we're going through. But I'd say it was more of a slap on the wrist for a very big, for a big offense done by a child. And I think that we can see the reaction coming through in the rand, with the rand losing ground all the way from about 15.25 going up to 15.70 odd intra-session. And I really think that the people that say the budget was a good budget are those people that appreciate that they're not going to pay more in income tax. We had some tax increases coming through last year. But looking at the minister's hand this time around, it really was very soft. And I thought that would have been a great opportunity to say, listen, guys, for now, for the next 2 years and 3 years, I really think we need to increase our tax collection so that we can effectively reduce the budget deficit that we have, and finance more growth in the country, etc., and stabilize things and avoid being downgraded to junk status.
Israel, what were your impressions?
Well, my impression was I thought of Gordon Brown's speech at some point in London where he spoke about the soft touch to cuts, because Gordon had already said we must move away from the austerity notion and also from the R word, which is recession. But comprehensively speaking, I think what the budget today managed to do was to get the South African narrative away from hiding from what's going on in the global markets, because we've been saying that our economy, the shape of our economy is what it is today because of what is going on in the global economy, global financial markets. But he was able to come down, bring us down home and say, what are the tit for tat? Where do we need to tighten the belt? Where do we need to loosen up? And he had a very good, interesting progression from the SONA, sort of giving details as to some of the pronouncements which were made by the president on the SONA to say on this particular issue, this is this is the nitty-gritty of it. I mean, he had good news for social development and coming up with also surprising, looking at how he viewed the whole transport industry and looking at it as part of the transformation wing, so to speak. Sure. And also coming to say that the budget must have two legs. On one hand, it must be inclusive, and on the other hand, it must be fair. And then it demonstrated that by showing that, he had, as my colleague has said, he had a soft touch towards the lower and middle income earners, but as well as on the high income earners and business. The tax there was not as what we would have expected, the pronouncement, because we know that his speech had to link with some of the pronouncements by the Reserve Bank recently when they were looking at the interest rate hikes issue, where they said that when you are going to tax the high income earners and big business, you must also be careful that you don't land us into the trouble of capital flight. So there was a bit of a very, very interesting balancing on the budget speech.
Hold it there. Question time is a different show, Mr. Nkomo. Francis heard my colleague will deal with those numbers and all that.
Yeah.
We have to look for the political angle to the budget.
Must we?
Yeah, we have to. Yeah. That makes us question time. Out of a budget of 1.46 trillion rand.
Yes.
Right? You have, let's look here. Education receives 297 billion overall. But I'm interested in NSFAS because currently the universities are on the boil, right? Yeah. Issues of education funding at tertiary level are quite burning at the moment. Let's look at that. Do you think that, how much are they getting? 14.3 billion or so? Does it address their plight?
No, look, it's actually a very difficult position for the government, because on the one hand, as you've seen this year, what we've had is students going to the streets to strike because they don't have accommodation and a whole lot of other things. Yes. And if you're talking about the accommodation side of things, if you're to talk about students in universities alone, and then you put in the FETs, then you start to say, if the government were to continuously be a funder of all of these gaps in the student education processes, 14 billion rands is quite small, relatively speaking. The support may need to be increased, in my view. And I think at the same time, what the government has done is at least give the universities some leverage by saying we'll pay off for some of the gaps that have been created by a limited, or rather by a no-fee increase from the schools, from hashtag fees must fall. But I think what I am more concerned about is the reactionary nature of administration, where we're saying, okay, we will take the fact that students don't want fees to increase, but for how long are we going to accept that? And it's going to keep creating more gaps in the system. Sure. We're going to have to keep looking for more money. But unfortunately, you know what? The source of the problem, in my view, is an economy which is not doing well. It's not necessarily our undoing. The world is not doing great. China is not doing well. So South Africa is also restrained. But if we were not restrained, I think parents will be employed. They'll be able to support the government by taking their children to school. So it has to be looked at the source. That's why I feel that there's more that could be done to really direct hundreds of billion rands into an area that will create more jobs via financing and making it easier for entrepreneurs to create these jobs than to try and say, let's rely on infrastructure projects, because those are short term in my view.
Israel, this is a year of elections, and like I said, obviously here on Question Time we'll look for issues that make political sense as well, the numbers. Social protection, old age grant is awarded, 58.9 billion. Child support grant, 52 billion. Disability grant. But overall, there's more than 450 billion or so that goes to social development.
Well, that's a very good question, Mpho. Look at the whole, the year It's the year of elections, obviously. But the interesting part for me on the political front is how much the Minister of Finance incorporated some of the suggestions that have been coming from the opposition party.
Yes.
In fact, just immediately after his speech, when the leaders of the opposition parties were reacting, it was amazing to hear Mr. Malema actually acknowledging that he heard some of the recommendations which he had made, particularly on the question of capital flight, which has been projected until 2018 as the very climax where it must be capped. But you couple that with the spending on issues of education, the increase on NSFAS, the increase on social development. Obviously, you are quite aware that the voting populace in our particular context would come from we do have the urban proletariat, if you will, but we also have a semi-urban sort of proletariat, if I can use the technical language. So that falls in that bracket, that is catered by the social development department. So you see that appeasing coming there. Obviously, you are aware that the minister will also speak as someone who is informed by the political proceedings, for instance, from the January 8th statement to the ANC Lekgotla, which deliberated just recently. So you find the undertones that speak to the social context and the socio-political context of the country. And as I said in the opening, that the speech tried to come back from declaring or delving too much on the question of the current and foreign markets and so on, but tried to come down to the local socio-political economy. But again, the interesting political issue that came out was his announcement that the BRICS Development Bank is going to be erected as from next month, if I recall properly. Which for me is very interesting, because that's one of the burning issues that the opposition parties have clinged on in relation to the question of markets and the finance portfolio. And obviously the recent events which we are aware of that precipitated the fall of the markets, as we saw with the capital flights in terms of after the minister announcement of the and also
Israel, hold it there. I want us to take a quick break now. What we're going to do, I want us to take a quick break. When we return, let's talk about the tax proposals here and see what we can get out of Bontate Bachelete. A reminder that you can call us and air your views on the numbers 089-110-4210, 089-110-4210, our Twitter handle @QuestionTime24. We need to hear from you. What were your impressions or your concerns in as far as this budget is concerned? We shall return shortly.
How great would it be to have Sia back for this reunion?
He's been traveling Africa for years. He's impossible to get a hold of.
We know what he drinks.
Let's find him.
Yeah!
You think it worked?
Hey, guys!
I'm coming home, tell the world that I'm coming home.
It all comes together with a castle. Mancosa, Southern Africa's leading distance learning institution, accredited, affordable and accessible management education programs, higher certificates, diplomas, undergraduate and postgraduate degrees. Register at Mancosa and be part of Southern Africa's leading private business school. Visit our website mancosa.co.za. Mancosa, management education reimagined.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, Owen Nkomo, is the executive partner at Inkunzi Wealth Group, and from our Durban studios, Israel Mkhize. He's a political economist. Pete, you are in Meyerton. Welcome.
Hi, Mpho, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
We've got a clear line.
Yes.
Mpho, my only problem is with this budget speed is South Africa didn't how we're going to super boost our economy. We didn't heard how we're going to generate $84 billion to our economy and our GDP per year. We didn't hear how we're going to generate we can save 333 million per day that we can generate back to free education. But we get restrained to inform our president of this information. And we need to inform this to our president so that we can super boost our economy.
How so? How so? You're talking very interesting figures there. How do we make 300 million per day?
300 million, easy. Reform the way we generate power. Very easy.
Oh.
It's simple. It's just politicians that needs to make it complicated.
Oh, I see. So it's got to do with Eskom.
Eskom as well.
Okay. Pete, thank you very much for that. Owen, whilst perhaps talking about Pete's submission, let us also look at the parastatals as well. Well, something was said, you know.
Something was sort of said.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, you know, it was like, no, don't worry, this one here, I'll come back to it now. You
Yeah.
know? So I think the challenge we saw there is that the minister does state that the parastatals are worth more than 1 trillion rands in value, and then he also indicated that they've had to create, some credit backing for these institutions to the tune of more than 440 billion rands, for the sustenance of these institutions. And then he indicates they're considering some restructuring, especially in the airline space, where they've got SAA and SA Express,
yes,
and a few other airlines owned by the government. So my take is, if you've got such a difficult budget, what's wrong with just saying, we are considering privatizing portions of what we own as the government. We're going to privatize 20% of what we own, and you can raise 200 odd billion rands from those numbers. Look for strategic assets that you want to protect and hold dearly, like the SABC, and make sure it doesn't fall into private hands. But I ask the question, how strategic is South African Airways to the bigger picture of things? Whereas, you and I don't enjoy flying in SAA because it's cheap. In fact, the lower tier airlines provide you more affordable traveling costs. So one wonders, who is SAA actually benefiting when you can get into an Emirates airline and fly to America for almost 35% less than SAA? Why are we holding on to something that keeps us paying so much cash? I really believe there should have been a bold statement around us, raising more cash from privatizing some of the state assets.
Didn't they say that, there are some parastatals that they are considering getting rid of?
He said they're looking at partnering with some private entities, but we don't know what that means. And, I am hoping that, because we have had this kind of conversation before happening, but we need to get a position where we can start to create entities like Telkom, which is, majority owned by government in terms of individual shareholding, but it's run, by private participants, and there's a lot of private shareholders in it. Why don't we try and do that with some of the government's entities to create efficiency and save money? Because it's not necessarily about getting rid of the entities, but just improving the efficiency in these SOEs.
Tsigelelo, you are in East London. Welcome.
Good day, Mpho, and your guest. Hello.
Welcome.
Allow me to begin with the statement that was made by the president a few hours before the budget speech.
Okay.
He announced that there will be increment for government officials. And we're beginning to ask ourselves the question, why are we doing the tight taxes? Are we doing it for them to enrich themselves or why? Secondly, the amount of money that was put against healthcare system, it was only 4.5, and it was the lowest of all. What is our government doing? And do they want to collapse our health system or not? So those are my two concerns.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the 4.5 billion rand that has been set aside for NHI pilot districts. Okay, I get your point.
Yes.
Ntsikelelo.
Thank you very much, Mpho.
All righty. Israel, let me just bring you in there, and perhaps let's also look at some of the tax proposals here. They're proposing to introduce a sugar tax on 1st April 2017 to help reduce excessive sugar intake. I'm not so sure if it's going to help or it's just, help to reduce the intake of sugar, or it is just going to help raise money there, because I'm not seeing people reducing their intake of sugar, really.
Well, on the tax question, Paul, Pravin was very clear that the overall approach between now and 2018 is that they use the three formula, high growth areas, and then curbing of expenditure, and then raising of taxes in strategic areas. And they also introduced, also introduced tax on the issues of what you call non-healthy habits, your tobacco and your alcohol. Obviously, he also touched on the question of tax when it came to the issue of fuel, obviously in relation to the current inflation and the price fluctuation in that area, so it won't pinch that much. When it comes to the sugar issue, it was very interesting and surprising for me when that came up. We remain to see how it's going to affect the bottom line. But I want to go back to the municipality issue, the public entities. One, he spoke on the question, it's very complex than just numbers. There is a lot of political ideology there, which I think informs how they should they approach that. The perceptions of the ability to govern local government infrastructure, which is at it's like the doorstep of being touched by government with the people on the ground. So I think as he even made a joke where he said, I thought there's only one R, which is, there's one P, which is Pravin, not privatization. Because the word privatization in the political economy of the party where he comes from is a very sensitive word. It's very loaded with a lot of ideological connotations, which you can, even if you do implement technical privatization, but it's a word that you wouldn't flaunt anyhow, because you've got labor here, you've got those ideological undertones, So I saw a very careful playing around with that notion, particularly on the.
All right, let's look at some of our tweets there and see what our viewers are saying before we wrap up. Sfiso Ngubani says, how do we make sure that politics and economy are in unison in the future in terms of navigating crisis or recession? Okay, Sfiso. Obama PLS says, your guest is having it all wrong with Rand losing ground. Globally, all markets tumbled due to Brazil downgrading, not BS16, I don't know what, the budget speech. Okay. The budget speech, this Kaye, was balanced and took into account real pressure points in the country like education and cutting the fat. Okay. Let's...
Well, all sorts of accusations coming through there. Look, yes, we are aware of the downgrade of Brazil, but I promise you, our market was expecting a lot more, was expecting a more effective, budget in terms of, like I said in the beginning, we needed more austerity measures. We needed to hear the government say, look, we're looking to reduce the budget deficit more aggressively. We can postpone some of our projects, just for this year. Let's see how things look. Economy globally is not doing well. Do we really proceed with NHI at this stage where we still need to fully fund it? Where are we going to get that cash? And then the one thing that people don't talk about is, in an environment where the rand is weakening, the government's liabilities when it comes to paying its debts, its bond liabilities, it keeps increasing. At the moment, it's north of 140 billion. You do the maths. You're paying north of 9% of what you're making in revenue as interest servicing costs. And then you've got the budget, or rather debt to GDP ratio that's now sitting at about 45.7%, expected to stabilize at 46 within the next 2 years, which in my view is actually is not so wise. And Sfiso raises a good point there when he talks about politics and the economics. I'll tell you this. You want to see the real economy? Mr. Kganyago, increasing interest rates in South Africa by 50 basis points. That's a very difficult position. In a tough economic environment, he was very bold. He gave us 50 basis points, not 25. But you know what that did? It helped the rand stabilize, which is going to make sure that inflation is going to be contained. But a failure of this budget and perceptions internationally, thinking that we're not bold enough, it means that the rand is just going to weaken again. So you've got one hand, you know, the challenge of being soft on the budget, and then on the one hand, Mr. Kganyago doing what he had to make sure that the rand is protected.
Gentlemen, we've run out of time, unfortunately. But yeah, I was really getting to enjoy this. I hope you'll come and school me again next time, you know, when people start toying about the budget. But that was question time for today. A big thank you to my guest and to you for watching the show. From me and the rest of the crew, you have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Health Talk looks into the increase of suicide and symptoms leading to suicide.
The death wish grows when you go into depression after a lot of stress.
And often when we talk about suicide, we don't talk about a person wanting to stop living, but rather wanting to stop living in pain.